Every day the world takes aim at you. Not with physical bullets, though sometimes those fly too, but with constant barrages designed to pierce your resolve, shatter your confidence, and collapse your will to continue moving forward. Financial pressures that punch holes in your security, relationship challenges that threaten your foundation, health concerns that target vital areas, social media comparisons that snipe at your self-worth, news cycles that bombard you with reasons to surrender to fear, anger, or despair. The fire never stops, never ceases, never pauses long enough for complete recovery or perfect preparation. And in this environment of constant incoming, you have exactly two choices. Develop armor that can withstand what the world fires at you, or be torn apart by the endless barrage. This is where the Kevlar mindset enters the battlefield of your existence. Kevlar isn't ordinary fabric. It isn't typical material. It isn't standard protection. It's engineered specifically to stop what would otherwise penetrate and destroy. Designed precisely to halt what would otherwise breach and devastate. Created exactly to withstand what would otherwise pierce and annihilate. The Kevlar mindset works the same way. It isn't ordinary thinking, isn't typical perspective, isn't standard psychology. It's engineered specifically to withstand pressures that would collapse conventional mindsets. Designed precisely to endure challenges that would shatter normal thinking. Created exactly to absorb impacts that would penetrate traditional perspectives. How is this possible? How does one build psychological and emotional protection capable of withstanding the constant fire of modern existence? It begins with understanding what makes actual Kevlar so effective. Its structure. Kevlar doesn't work through thickness alone, doesn't function through weight, doesn't operate through rigid hardness that could itself shatter under sufficient impact. It works through interwoven fibers, specifically aligned to disperse force, through interconnected strands precisely arranged to distribute energy, through systematically organized components exactly positioned to spread impact across the entire system rather than allowing penetration at any single point. The Kevlar mindset functions through the same fundamental principles, not through simplistic positive thinking that can shatter under real pressure, not through naive optimism that can collapse when facing actual challenges. Not through rigid denial that can fracture when confronting genuine obstacles, but through interwoven perspectives, interconnected beliefs, and systematically organized principles that together create psychological and emotional protection, unprecedented in its capacity to withstand what would destroy less developed mindsets. The first crucial fiber in this protective weave, sovereign perspective. Most people allow external circumstances to dictate their internal experience. They permit whatever happens outside themselves to determine what happens inside themselves. They surrender control of their psychological and emotional states to forces they don't command and can't control. Then they wonder why they feel constantly vulnerable, perpetually exposed, endlessly susceptible to whatever the world fires in their direction. The man with a Kevlar mindset approaches reality differently, not through denial of external challenges, but through sovereign command of internal response. Not through ignoring actual problems, but through maintaining ultimate authority over his own psychological and emotional domain, regardless of what happens in territories he doesn't control. This sovereignty creates the first layer of protection against the world's constant fire, the initial barrier against endless incoming, the primary defense against perpetual barrage. Because when you truly understand and embody the absolute truth that while you cannot always control what happens, you maintain complete authority over how you respond to what happens. You establish the foundation upon which all other protective fibers attach and interconnect. This isn't theory, isn't philosophy, isn't comfortable idea without practical application. It's the battle-tested reality that has allowed men throughout history to withstand pressures that would crush those lacking this fundamental sovereignty, to endure challenges that would destroy those missing this essential perspective, to absorb impacts that would annihilate those without this crucial understanding. From prisoners of war who maintained internal freedom despite external captivity, to entrepreneurs who converted devastating failure into unprecedented success, to ordinary men who transformed crushing personal tragedy into extraordinary meaning and mission, this sovereign perspective forms the core fiber from which true psychological and emotional protection begins. The second essential fiber interwoven with the first, purposeful attribution. Most people interpret events through passive frameworks that emphasize victimhood, coincidence, or deterministic forces beyond personal influence. They view what happens as random chaos, meaningless accident, or predestined outcome they can neither affect nor utilize. And from these interpretations emerges profound vulnerability to whatever the world fires in their direction. The man with a KEVLAR mindset attributes differently. He systematically assigns empowering meaning to everything he experiences, consistently interprets events through frameworks that emphasize opportunity, development, and strategic advantage rather than victimhood, damage, or defeat. This purposeful attribution doesn't deny genuine pain, real challenge, or actual obstacle. Doesn't pretend difficulty is secretly easy, problem is actually blessing, or suffering is somehow instantly beneficial. It acknowledges reality fully while simultaneously assigning meaning that serves rather than meanings that sabotage. Recognizes challenge completely while interpreting through frameworks that empower rather than frameworks that victimize. Accepts difficulty entirely while processing through perspectives that strengthen rather than perspectives that weaken. When unexpected job loss becomes perfect timing to pursue what I really want, rather than unfair devastation of my security. When relationship ending transforms into necessary clearing for what better suits my path, rather than proof I'm unworthy of lasting connection. When health challenge converts to wake-up call to rebuild stronger foundations rather than random tragedy destroying my future. The incoming fire that would have penetrated and destroyed someone lacking this purposeful attribution gets absorbed and dispersed by this protective fiber, preventing psychological and emotional penetration while simultaneously converting potentially destructive energy into fuel for forward movement. Again, this isn't theory, isn't wishful thinking, isn't comfortable concept without battlefield verification. It's the combat-confirmed reality that explains why two men can experience identical external circumstances, yet emerge with completely different psychological and emotional outcomes. Why two individuals can face the same objective challenges yet produce entirely different subjective results. Why two people can encounter the same external fires yet sustain totally different internal impacts. The third crucial fiber interwoven with the previous two, strategic response. Most people react to incoming fire impulsively, emotionally, without tactical consideration or strategic assessment. They return fire wildly, surrender immediately, or freeze completely when facing incoming pressure, challenge, or difficulty. And these untrained reactions create catastrophic vulnerability when facing the world's constant barrage. The man with a KEVLAR mindset responds differently. He implements tactical protocols specifically designed for the particular incoming he's facing, executes strategic responses precisely calibrated for the specific challenge at hand, deploys methodical countermeasures exactly matched to the unique pressure he's currently enduring. This strategic response capacity doesn't emerge spontaneously, doesn't manifest accidentally, doesn't develop automatically through passive existence. It builds through deliberate preparation before crisis strikes, through methodical development of response protocols while in calm conditions, through systematic creation of tactical frameworks during controlled circumstances that can then be implemented during chaotic periods when clear thinking becomes most difficult yet most necessary. The man with a KEVLAR mindset doesn't wonder what to do when unexpected financial pressure strikes. He's already developed and rehearsed specific protocols for exactly this scenario. Doesn't question how to respond when relationship conflict emerges. He's already created and practiced precise frameworks for exactly this situation. Doesn't hesitate about what action to take when health concerns appear. He's already designed and trained particular methodologies for exactly this circumstance. This strategic response capacity functions like the carefully engineered layers in actual KEVLAR, ensuring that no single impact can penetrate completely through his psychological and emotional protection. That no individual challenge can breach entirely through his mental and spiritual armor. That no isolated difficulty can pass fully through his cognitive and soulful defenses. The fourth vital fiber, interwoven with all previous elements: resilient connection. Most people attempt to withstand the world's constant fire in isolation. Try to absorb life's endless barrage alone. Endeavor to endure existence's perpetual bombardment without supportive integration into something larger than their individual capacity. And this isolation creates fatal vulnerability when facing sustained incoming over extended time periods. The man with a KEVLAR mindset connects strategically, integrates purposefully with carefully selected others who reinforce rather than weaken his protective systems. Bonds deliberately with specifically chosen relationships, communities, and traditions that strengthen rather than compromise his psychological and emotional armor. This resilient connection doesn't mean indiscriminate vulnerability to anyone and everyone, which would itself create critical weakness in his protective systems. Doesn't represent careless exposure to whomever happens to be conveniently available, which would itself establish dangerous gaps in his defensive capabilities. Doesn't constitute unexamined intimacy with whoever appears immediately accessible, which would itself generate hazardous holes in his mental and emotional armor. It exemplifies strategic integration with precisely those relationships, exactly those communities, specifically those traditions that have demonstrated capacity to withstand their own incoming fire, while simultaneously strengthening others connected to them. Like the interwoven fibers in actual KEVLAR that gain unprecedented strength through their systematic connection to adjacent fibers, the man with this mindset develops extraordinary resilience through purposeful bonding with others who share compatible values, aligned purposes, and congruent commitments to becoming bulletproof in their own right. Not through dependency, which itself would create vulnerability. Not through neediness, which itself would establish weakness. Not through desperate clinging, which itself would generate fragility. But through mutual reinforcement between sovereign individuals who recognize that strategic connection creates protective capabilities impossible to develop in isolation. That purposeful integration enables defensive capacities unattainable through individual effort alone. That deliberate bonding produces resilient strength unachievable through solitary endeavor. The fifth and final fiber completing this protective weave, transcendent purpose. Most people navigate existence without clear mission that transcends momentary comfort, immediate pleasure, or conventional achievement. They drift through from experience to experience, paycheck to paycheck, relationship to relationship without coherent purpose, larger than temporary satisfaction or social validation. And this absence of transcendent purpose creates profound vulnerability to penetration by whatever random incoming happens to strike their position at any given moment. The man with a KEVLAR mindset operates differently. He functions from clearly defined mission that exceeds personal comfort, outlasts individual lifetime, and surpasses conventional measures of success or failure in materialistic terms. This transcendent purpose doesn't require grandiose vision detached from practical reality, doesn't demand messianic complex disconnected from genuine humility, doesn't necessitate delusional ambition separated from authentic capability. It simply means connecting your daily actions, current challenges, and present circumstances to meaning larger than momentary experience, to purpose beyond temporary sensation, to mission that outlives individual existence through impact on others that continues beyond your immediate presence or direct involvement. When the inevitable incoming fire strikes, when the constant barrage impacts, when the perpetual bombardment connects, this transcendent purpose functions as the final protective layer that prevents penetration when all other fibers have dispersed as much impact as they can absorb. Because men can endure almost anything if they understand why they're enduring it, can withstand almost any pressure if they recognize what purpose that pressure serves, can absorb almost any impact if they perceive how that impact connects to mission larger than momentary comfort or immediate escape from temporary pain. Together, these five interwoven fiber sovereign perspective, purposeful attribution, strategic response, resilient connection, and transcendent purpose create the KEVLAR mindset that enables becoming truly bulletproof in a world of constant fire. Not through pretending the incoming doesn't exist, not through denying the barrage continues, not through ignoring that the bombardment persists, but through developing internal armor specifically engineered to withstand external pressure, through building psychological and emotional protection precisely designed to absorb life's impacts without penetration to your essential core, through creating mental and spiritual defense exactly constructed to disperse existence's challenges without breach of your fundamental sovereignty. This mindset doesn't develop overnight, doesn't emerge instantly, doesn't manifest immediately upon first attempting its implementation. Like actual KEVLAR, it forms through systematic process, through methodical development, through deliberate engineering of its essential components, and their interconnection into a unified protective system greater than the sum of its individual elements. But for those willing to undertake this development, to engage this process, to implement this engineering, the results transcend ordinary human capacity for withstanding pressure, enduring challenge, and absorbing impact without penetration or destruction. You become, in the most practical sense possible, bulletproof in a world of constant fire. Not immune to impact, which isn't possible for anyone who truly engages with existence. Not isolated from pressure, which isn't attainable for anyone who authentically participates in life. Not separated from challenge, which isn't achievable for anyone who genuinely contributes to reality. But armored against penetration, protected against destruction, defended against devastation that would annihilate those lacking what you've systematically developed through consistent implementation of these 5 essential fibers and their integration into a unified protective system. This is the KEVLAR mindset, the internal armor that transforms external pressure from existential threat into developmental opportunity. The psychological protection that converts outside challenge from potential destruction into actual strengthening. The emotional defense that changes incoming fire from deadly force into energizing fuel for your continued advance, despite whatever the world launches in your direction. Will you develop it? Will you build it? Will you implement the systematic process required to transform yourself from vulnerable target into bulletproof operator capable of advancing under fire that would pin down or take out those lacking what you've engineered within yourself? The choice belongs to you alone. The constant fire continues regardless of your decision. The perpetual barrage maintains its cadence irrespective of your preference. The only variable you control is whether you remain vulnerable to penetration or become genuinely bulletproof through development of the KEVLAR mindset that transforms how you experience, interpret, and respond to everything the world fires in your direction.